Okay. And now it says we're live right now. All right.
Awesome.
Typically, I hold these conversations, keep them private, but we're going to start streaming live. Today's conversation is regarding the response to this virus, this epidemic that swept the globe. I have Walter Rooks on with me, presidential nominee. No, I'm just joking. Would you like to tell us a little something about yourself, Walter?
Oh, okay. Yes, I'm Walter Rooks. Let me look at the camera. Well, I've been overseas now since 2010. I took about a year and a half off and worked at the State Department. And that was actually a decent job, except for the standing. And everyone seems to be the same. All I can say is blue suits and brown shoes. That was the go-to uniform back then. Everyone was. So I see everyone's kind of just doing the same thing there. But I have been interested in the political debate all around. But one thing I have noticed is that the reason for hyperpartisanship now, based on a study I did a few years ago when we were in Afghanistan, it's not the politicians, it's not those people, it's the people that vote them in, and or the people who just don't vote except around the presidential election, which doesn't make as big a difference as your state legislature.
As the minor election.
Yeah. That's where people need
smaller elections, all the way down to the cities and the town elections. That makes a huge impact on your day-to-day life. But people overlook that, and they want to blame it on the president, or they only want to vote when there's a presidential election, or during the years their president's being elected. But midterm elections, and then the smaller county and state, county, and local elections, town elections, they're often overlooked by the population. And those are the ones with the main impact on your day-to-day living.
You're so true. I always thought things work specifically, then they go out generally, so to speak. So you're right. People seem to forget, or they focus so much on the presidential elections, which shows how even more hyper-partisan everything is. The focus and the money goes on, hey, get out, rock the vote. And that's only primarily during the presidential elections, which I always thought that was so weird. But,
it's kind of odd. All right. So we want to have this debate. We actually had one other person, but he wasn't able to make it, about the response to this virus, SARS-2, as I call it. Everyone else calls it COVID-19. I've done a lot of studies on it. I've done a lot of research on it. And I'm actually... here in a moment, I'm going to give you a chance to go ahead and lay out where are you at right now in the world?
Right now, I'm in Taiwan. The Republic.
Okay,
actually, the official name is the Republic of China. Not part of China.
They're
the Republic.
So you're in one of the places that's had the best response to it. So you have a unique take on this, and actually your perspective is wonderful to have on here, and I'm very excited to hear what you have to say, because not only are you fairly intellectual, in my opinion, but your location gives you a special view into it. So go ahead.
Well, I'll tell you.
What's your thoughts on the response?
Well, my thoughts when it first occurred, I thought, this thing will work itself out, like everyone else. But then when it began to just rapidly grow, I saw that it didn't seem. Well, let me put it like this way. It was a big deal here in Taiwan, but the thing is, they've always, a big thing here, especially in an Asian country, and as my Chinese teacher told me, the Taiwanese are already kind of afraid of any sickness. Case in point, when SARS came through, they lost a lot of people. So they have a command post set up for this. And they were tracking and advising people to self-quarantine if they traveled, which is something that, I did as well, because I went overseas and came back. But when they track people, they actually track them by their cell phone number, and they knew exactly your location. They weren't harsh and sealing doors, as a friend of, or a guy I met who taught in China, who actually said in China, it's a lot worse than the news lets on. He said the police had doors sealed, and if that seal was broken,
I think we've
someone was
lost signal here.
Oh, I hear you, but I don't. I mean, I hear you, but I don't know if you hear me. Are we still good? Do you hear me? You don't hear me?
Yeah, it seems like I got you. I hear you. I hear you. I just lost signal with
Oh, okay.
you.
I forgot what all I said.
All right, go ahead. Now you were talking about the tracking, how well they tracked everyone coming in and out of the country, and then it skipped a little part and it went straight on to where we could hear you about they had the seals on the doors. That's insane.
Okay, so no, not here. So I met a gentleman here in Taiwan who was teaching in mainland China, and he said that
so this was in China.
Yeah, it's far worse than what China. It's just his take on it. It's a lot worse in China. He said in mainland China they had seals. I don't know how on people's doors, so they knew if you broke the seal. In mainland China, they wanted you to stay completely inside.
Wow.
But here in Taiwan, they weren't. When they tracked, they just had your cell phone number. If you were, as it progressed later on, a friend of mine, his girlfriend, she came from Vietnam. She was visiting, doing some work there, and she had to quarantine. And they would come and check on her every so days, but they knew based on her cell phone, if she moved out of the location, she was not to leave. And the thing about Taiwan, they provide. If you need, they'll provide food if you need it. So when they have you quarantined, it's not something harsh. They're going to make sure you're okay. They have a command post for this. So currently in Taiwan, I posted it on my Facebook. There's a little over 400 people who've been infected. 6 people have died. 300 and something came from outside of Taiwan, either foreigners traveling or Taiwanese who've traveled and come back. But 200, maybe 300 or something recovered. And the rest are still in the hospital recovering. So they've kept a good control. However, you don't hear much about this. We've heard about Hong Kong, Singapore, but of course, mainland China's influence over everything keeps Taiwan out of the WHO, which I don't know if you saw that big rift between the WHO president and Taiwan, and he claimed racism.
Well, it's actually quite interesting. There's a recent interview where a reporter asked the person in charge of the coronavirus response from the WHO about Taiwan, and he said, "I'm sorry, we lost connection." And then she asked again, and then he hung up on her actually, and then he called back a little later. She asked again. He completely avoided the question. He said, "Yeah, China's doing a wonderful job." So it would give the appearance that the WHO is bought and paid for by China with no evidence supporting that as of yet. And so I'm going to qualify that remark because I don't want to say something that can't be supported. But just the appearance from an outsider, it seems it's questionable why that gentleman from the WHO organization would react in such a manner. Being asked about Taiwan. If he were asked a similar question about a city within China, would he have done the same thing, or would he have responded about the city within China? So obviously Taiwan's a very touchy subject, and the fact that he would jump offline so hurriedly means he's been specifically told not to discuss Taiwan, which is alarming, especially since Taiwan's apparently doing better than most of the world in their response to it.
Yes, they are.
Go ahead.
Well, and not to dwell on that subject too much, but it has to be something when the recent Top Gun, they had to replace the Taiwan. He had a patch from Taiwan, China. They had to replace that. Many countries, like when I'm looking at stuff trying to, online, a lot of companies won't acknowledge Taiwan. They'll just call it Taiwan, a province of China. So I would say there's some legitimacy to that. Yes. I think 16 countries right now acknowledge Taiwan as a country. And one that pulled out was apparently influenced by mainland China. So,
So, all right, the general response to this pandemic, I think, has been problematic. I don't agree with the total loss of freedoms that we're experiencing, and I think that while initially they should have taken measures like they did that were they were trying to limit travel, trying to limit movement between borders, trying to take the people they knew were infected with it or had been around someone infected with it and quarantine them, get them off to the side until they had a chance to further investigate this sickness. I don't disagree with any of that. I disagree with the continued quarantine of healthy individuals after we now know that its impact on healthy people is actually very similar to the flu, and the death rates are in line with the flu. Now, I'm not saying it is very different from that. I'm just comparing the statistics, the raw numbers to that of the flu. Now, perhaps if we hadn't reacted this way, hadn't quarantined, it would have been far greater. There's lots of arguments against it, but the information coming out from doctors insinuates that what we're doing now is no longer required. We should allow those who are, or quarantine those who are sick or who are susceptible, such as those in nursing homes or those who are more susceptible to this sickness. Put those people off to the side and care for them. But the general population, the young and the healthy and the ones that are least susceptible to this, should be able to go about their daily lives. I can go through the general timeline here of a response, but I think that there was a delay. First, the WHO contradicts itself constantly. Initially, I think it was, let me look. When it first came out, when China first announced to the WHO there's a problem, I think it was in December, although the first patients actually are now found out to have been in November.
Okay.
All right. So countries began looking into this, questioning what was going on. Initially, the WHO said it's okay. Don't worry about locking down your borders. This isn't a big deal. Continue about your daily lives, which actually allowed the spread of the virus outside of China. Then when countries began locking down their borders, one of the big things came when the president of the United States locked down travel between the United States and China. He was wide across the globe. Other leaders around the globe and from the Democrats heavily criticized his decision to cut off travel between the U.S. and China. Now they're saying he didn't act soon enough. But I think that the information he was receiving from the World Health Organization and from mainland China is what caused him to delay his actions and inevitably close down the border, because he was receiving more information than what the leadership had at the time, the Congress and the Senate, the ones we elected. Do you have any opinion on that?
I think it was difficult for me to get a footing or hold on this, being as where I am, except by the media, which you have to take with.
You have to throw out most of it.
And so I think the response. I personally think the initial response to stop all incoming travel from China was a good thing. I think we should have done that, especially we don't know if it's spreading like this. I'm like, let's take some measures first, and as we find out, get more information, then we can slowly loosen it. I think we should have stopped everything from China. I mean, what else can you do? If it's spreading like it did there should be cause for alarm. Taiwan, when Taiwan found out, they actually sent a group over there. Of course, China was very limiting with the Taiwan group that went to study. They wouldn't let them know much. And that gave Taiwan, from what I read, that was a signal to them that it was far worse than China was letting them know, because they wouldn't let Taiwan fact-finding mission, because they have this issue with Taiwan, do as much as they want to. I think the handling of it initially, the president's to limit, I think that was a good thing. What's happening now, I don't know. There's a part of me that says yes, or if we're not going to completely, I won't say lock down people per se, but I think there should be some stringent measures. What measures? I don't know. I'm not a doctor. But if it's spreading like it is, or like they project it to, then that's cause for alarm, because we have lost a lot of people. Now, a lot of people say, well, we lost more people with the flu, because we do all the time. And I have to look into how people are putting it together. To me, it's like when people say, oh, the Republican Party is a party of Lincoln. That's a whole different thing. And that's not the same thing. But, I I would have to think at this time, I would look to the president for guidance. Now, there's so many roads you can go down to, because we know President Trump, there's good and bad in every administration. I think President Trump, his maybe his ego, I don't know, maybe his handling it is, that's a kind of a situation, or the fact that, well, we know he will say things maybe off the cuff, maybe not totally true. I don't know. That's a whole other situation. I think right now the way the government is handling it is, me as a, okay, so let's go back. I'm a Republican. I'm like, I think Colin Powell said it. I believe in strong defense, rather, strong foreign policy, take care of our people, and let's work together. That's kind of what I believe. I believe that the media is a little harsh on the president. If nothing more, I think if they backed off, they might get a different reaction and response. We know the president is kind of, if you go against him, he's going against you. So change the tactics. Someone has to give. And it might, being as he's a president, and I'm sure he's under some tremendous pressure, and we know they're going to have trigger questions. And of course, it's going to happen on the other side too, with Fox or whatever. I'm like, back off and, let the president, give him a moment to see how he's going to do. Now, as far as
start asking valid questions that require a factual response. Here's a good example of why I think the governments have failed in their handling of this. While initially I agreed with what they were doing, I have to qualify that remark. I don't necessarily think that I publicly at least agreed, because I don't ever like being told what to do unless you provide me some sort of valid support for what your actions that I agree with. And if you're saying, okay, there's a virus, we don't know about this virus, but it might get you sick, it might not get you sick, it may kill you, it may not kill you, and we don't have a vaccine for it because it's a virus. By the way, we want you to stay in your house and not go outside. No, there's no support for that. And then their death toll was so minor. If you look at the major cases, the major diseases over the years, we still haven't even surpassed yellow fever. Maybe we have 100,000 deaths is what they had during the pandemic when yellow fever took off. Right. And here we go. That was it was the late 1800s, yellow fever took off. They had between 100 and 150,000 deaths from it. I don't think we past 150,000 deaths. When they were experiencing the yellow fever and everything was going on, were people being forced to endure what they're enduring now as it was a global shutdown? No. How about the swine flu under President Obama's administration? Do you remember having been locked down under President Obama's administration? Do you remember having face masks forced upon you if you go outside or if you want to go to work? Do you remember having the entire world economy shut down for the swine flu during President Obama's term? We lost 200,000 people to the swine flu, and none of that was done.
Right. Yeah.
It's alarming. Those are small ones. It continues from there. 56 million people were lost to smallpox. Did we behave the way we're behaving now about smallpox? No. Now, when looking at the most recent study at LA Times reporting it, University of Southern California conducted a study in conjunction with the LA Health Department, and they found that the actual cases could be 55 times more people are infected. So you're talking 240 to 400,000 people in California alone could have this virus. Okay. That means the actual likelihood of death from this virus is 0.1 to 0.3%. So we are crushing the global economy right now. According to Bloomberg, we're looking at a depression that will equal or surpass the 1930s Great Depression, right? And it's getting worse with every day. The United Nations is already projecting 265 million deaths from starvation because of this. And it's increasing by 1 million people per day. For every day we continue this nonsense. And all of it is because a virus has a 0.1 to 0.3% chance of killing you.
Mm-hmm.
That's insane. There has to be some sort of ulterior motive, or if I'm going to be blunt, human stupidity and human pride has taken over their governments. They overreacted, and now they're too prideful to admit to it because they're worried about how they're going to look to their voters, and they want to continue their term. So worldwide, the governments have all agreed, either formally or informally, to continue this nonsense and slowly open things back up and behave as if they've got this thing under control. When in actuality, it was never out of control. They just thought it was, and they're too short-sighted or involved in themselves to admit to it.
Yeah.
That's what it seems like to me.
You know what? That's a very good point. And now I want to bring up.
I'll send you the link if you want for the studies.
I'll bring up one thing, and this could be a sidebar, could not be, maybe for future references. This is what I believe. So, sidebar. When there's a debate going on, even on Facebook, I think it's imperative that a person listens, not to have his next response, but listen and consider. And as I listen to you, and I begin to consider, that's a good point. And something was really good because I've said things on both sides and been attacked. One guy said, "Put down your agenda," and all I told the guy was, "Calm down. You're putting all caps and yelling at someone for disagreeing with you." He said, "Your agenda," and I said, "Listen, guy," and I said, "It has nothing to do with the agenda, and I actually agree with you." But nevertheless, so I listened openly, and the thing that really struck me when you said the pride of the governments, also the pride of the parties. So you've got people that just like, the Republicans don't want to do, the Democrats don't want to do because we'll lose the voters. And I think they've forgotten why they're here. And, and the government's, like you said, let's just ease back and say, yay, we put these things in place and things got better. When, like you said, the fact of the matter was they reacted, they responded, maybe
in a good way, and the world can agree that the initial response was fitting for something that they didn't know,
right? But
they never dropped it down appropriately.
That's right. Then they stuck to it, and all you heard was the mass amount of people are dying in Italy, and more people are dying in this country, in that country, or in the States. So, but no one has there ever been a government or president that said, I was wrong on this? I can't.
I don't know. And if somebody's watching this and they do know, please put that into the chat so we can see it. But I think there's a valid point, Walter. I don't think there's ever been a situation where someone in a presidential or prime minister slot has said, "You know what? My bad.
Went
the wrong way. Let's fix what we've done."
Exactly.
But I think that has to happen. Now I don't think I might be crediting humans too much with this because as well as I do how impossible it is to get more than 10 people to agree on a single thing, let alone 2 people, let alone 10 or 100 or 1,000. Right. So let's say Bill Gates' remarks in 2015 TED Talks. He said he believes the world is overpopulated and thinks that he would like to see at minimum a 17% reduction in population. That's 1.1 billion people out of 7 billion, right? He continued on saying birth control, not birth control. He said he used a different word about basically through abortions and increasing the number of abortions we're having. Manage healthcare, manage pregnancy, and vaccines, and one other. He had a couple bullet points he was discussing, and I have it on my screen, but my computer's freezing. He had a couple bullet points he went through, and you're thinking, how would you reduce a population through vaccine? How would you reduce a population through a universal healthcare system? Mm-hmm. And how would you reduce the population through the way he phrased it was supporting female reproductive rights or whatever. General ideas, all of them would sound good to the layperson, but his end goal was a 17% reduction in the population. And during that TED Talk, he said, more than anything else, he would like to be in charge of the vaccine. What is Bill and Melinda Gates involved in right now? I'm just saying.
And
just putting that out there.
Yeah, well, you know what? That's a compelling argument when you look at. First of all, what would compel a person to say something like that in a public forum?
Well, have you ever heard of the Georgia Guidestones?
I've heard of it, but that's all. I've only heard of it.
Okay, so there is a group of people who put into that a lot of heavy names. I'll actually look them up now, but they talk about this very thing: reduction in the world population in mega cities, and the everyone. I don't know, man. It's almost like a Leonardo DiCaprio movie they wanted. The Georgia Guidestones. Let me look that up right now.
Yeah, I'm going to Georgia Guidestones. I don't know where. I may have heard it from you back in Afghanistan. Georgia. There it is. In Elbert County in 1980. Yes, really. Yes, I have. Now it's coming. Yes, I do remember this. Yep, advocacy on population control, eugenics, and internationalism made them a target for controversy and conspiracy. Yes, I did.
There's been a lot of questions about who's behind these things. They said it's a mystery man, and I had a list on the computer, but the tab is freezing intentionally, I think, with a list of the most likely people who contributed to building these Georgia Guidestones. And they're all names of people who would be in the in some of the more elite groups that you and I won't be a part of, the Bilderberg group and such.
Right.
So you almost wonder, with the people who attended Bill and Melinda Gates' wedding, including Warren Buffett, perhaps this is an overall push. Maybe it was a general loss of control of a virus. And are you aware of the Harvard professor who got busted for providing secrets to China, to the Wuhan lab?
And it was just a blip.
Chinese nationals. Yeah, it was just a blip. And then there's 2 Chinese nationals who were also providing information and samples and such to the same lab. Then you have Dr. Fauci, who's heading up this response effort for the White House. He's a big contributor to the Wuhan lab there. And you have Bill Gates, which is contributing a lot of money to the lab there. So, oh man, what is it? Which is the Dan Brown novel? Is it Angels and Demons or Inferno? I forgot which Dan Brown novel talks about the virus. And
I remember that coming out not too long ago. Oh, yeah. Was it Dan Brown or
when you're old like us? Not too long ago, but it is several years ago. So whether it was intentionally released or not, there's so many questions surrounding it, and the questions are just getting worse, and more people are asking these questions the longer this goes on. So it's almost as if the organization behind this, if there is an organization besides somebody spilling it on their clothing and then walking out and go buy it at the market, and it could honestly be something that simple. They're working on a project. It was going to be a military grade biological chemical type attack that they were designing, because I do believe that China still has its eye on military control of the world. I don't think China's ever given that up.
Oh, no.
But that's just me being an American. And thinking
I agree. Yes.
And so it could have been a biological weapon that they were developing. Somebody wasn't as careful as they should have been in the lab, and then they spilt on themselves or got sick. They gave it to their husband, which is the theory, and then he went shopping in the market, and now they said it came from a bat.
Right.
Which I don't believe it came from. It jumped from an animal to a human, especially considering animals can't get it. So if it jumped from an animal to a human, now it can't jump back to the animals. That's just not correct.
Okay, now I saw some. Oh, I was about to say, now I
Go ahead.
saw something not too long ago, and I didn't check to see if it's valid when you said viruses going from animals to human. Now, they say
That is possible. You do have viruses that do that.
Because they say in the Amazon rainforest in South America, there's so many viruses amongst the animals and plant life, but there's there's a check and balance within nature. And
yes,
of course, we don't bother tamper with a lot of those things. Hopefully we don't eat them or get them in our bloodstream or whatever. So I did see that. And so the question I had because I was wondering, was this something that was, a weapon, or, did it come, as they said, and it had to be something, because I wonder why I guess China had no choice but to announce, hey, this situation is bad. Was it so bad that it warranted? Because I thought if it were, well, I guess no. I guess so. Even if it were a bioweapon and it got out of control, they have to announce, hey, it came through a wet market, to get on top of it before someone else said, it's a little bit deeper than that. So, I think.
Or do you think China intentionally let it escape from their country? They delayed telling and that's another question that comes up again, is the China delayed telling the World Health Organization. The World Health Organization initially said, don't worry about it. And so I was watching this thing during the beginning days when it first was hitting China, and it hadn't even hit Europe mainly yet, right? I recall this is back December 31st, I believe, when the WHO announced, or China told the World Health Organization.
Yeah.
And I remember starting to watch this thing as it progressed and wondering why, if it was so deadly, world leaders weren't locking down the borders. Just lock down the borders with China. Don't let anyone from China in. Don't let anyone, you can go home if you want, but anyone coming from China needs to sit in quarantine for X number of days. Right. And I was wondering what the delay was in response.
Yeah.
And I watched it spread. And it seemed once this thing had spread around the globe, then they locked down. So it was almost intentional to get it around the world, then lock down. And then they didn't lock down. They just locked down the borders. They still allowed people to move between and maximize the spreading of this virus. Then we can go ahead and start taking steps to lock down. And it's just, there's so many questions being caused by the reaction to this virus. Then the World Health Organization comes out and says, you need gloves and you need a mask.
Yeah.
And then the doctors come out in New York City, that epicenter for America. The doctors say, oh no, by the way, actually the mask does nothing. You don't need a mask.
I remember that. Yeah.
And then the World Health Organization says, oh no, you don't need a mask. Then they say you do need a mask. Then they say you don't need a mask. Then they say you need gloves. Then they say you don't need gloves. So the World Health Organization, they have to set something and they have to roll with it. And when they make a change, they have to stick to the change. So that's something else that I wanted to bring up. That's again throws question into the whole situation, and it's pumping the numbers. Now there's a press conference in Los Angeles where they admitted to bumping up the numbers. So let's say I have, no, I'm not going to use that because it'll be misconstrued. Let's say somebody I know has coronavirus, right?
Okay.
And their wife dies of a heart attack. She's never been tested. She doesn't have coronavirus. She has no symptoms. But her husband has coronavirus and his wife dies of a heart attack. That, according to the press conference in Los Angeles, is counted as a coronavirus death.
Right. Yeah.
Now, coronavirus patients are now worth more than some elective surgeries to hospitals. That means if you diagnose somebody with coronavirus, you get paid more money from the government and more money from the health insurance than you would have if you had done an elective surgery, which is typically their big money maker. In New York City, I have to confirm this, but the article I read it from a news source. I don't believe in media, so I like to verify things independently from the journalists, because, and it's not a hit against the media. But like, for example, when they were reusing film from Italian hospitals in the United States as a scare tactic, it was on accident. It wasn't on purpose. It wasn't a scare tactic. They were
Okay.
reusing film on accident. You know, so whenever I read an article, I take it with a lot of salt. So, anyways, the hospitals in New York were facing a budgetary crisis from the healthcare plan that was pushed out by the previous administration. They weren't able to recover enough money from insurance companies to pay their doctors, and they were going negative. So there's a big crisis among the hospitals, and I can confirm that because I have a lot of contacts in Texas. Texas hospitals were closing down left and right because of budget constraints. They did not have enough money to pay the doctors coming in from the insurance companies. The prescription costs too much. The doctors are paid too much. I'm sorry, doctors. I'm sorry, pharmaceutical reps, but it's the fact of the matter. We have to reassess everything.
Yes.
Until I'm on a gurney and they're saving my life, then I don't care how much I pay.
Of course, yeah.
But so the hospitals in New York were facing a budgetary crisis. They were upside down. They were in the red. Now the government comes in. They say for every coronavirus patient that you diagnose, you get X percentage above a regular patient. And for every coronavirus patient that dies, you get X number of money, X number of dollars above a regular patient. That, if I was a capitalist and I had a hospital sitting in the red, I would have an epidemic. I would have so many people with the coronavirus. I'd diagnose everyone.
True. Yeah.
Now, on the CDC's own website, they acknowledge that the coronavirus test currently returns positive if you have the regular flu, if you have pneumonia, and if you have several other things. So you can have a regular cold, get the coronavirus test, you got coronavirus.
Right. And that in turn gives more funding to the. I mean, of course, we know this is going to happen. This is something that's happened even in the contracting world that we were in. They're going to boost up the numbers and play around, even things that they do in school systems, just to get more federal funds. So I mean, of course, I can definitely see that happening, and it's terrible how it is. Every action causes, what, as physics of whatever, the same type of reaction. That's it. So by doing this, they've caused not only this. I don't know how intertwined the state governments will be in it, but they cause them to panic, which causes companies like my company push out, hey, our company is going to cover Signal, we'll cover COVID-19 testing, et cetera, et cetera. So it causes all of this to happen, which causes many more things to happen, which now we're looking at a situation globally, especially in the United States, that's going to take, to me, it seems like years to fix. Years to fix. So I think that, number one, initially, just like a parent, my kids are sick, I'm going to do everything, do everything I know to do. Then once I realized, oh, it's not like this, but they didn't do it. They dug in, much like people do in their political stance. Most people, when they argue, they've dug in. You're not going to change me. This is how I'm going to fit. I'm just like, for example, if you and I run for office, if we don't toe the line, we don't get any good committee positions. There'll be no funding coming our way, and we'll probably just do two years and we're done unless we do something rogue. And that's how it's happening even now. So we can't even get a decent response from any side. No one wants to say, hey, we're moving too fast. Let's try this. Now, my issue, my dilemma maybe is either President Trump has to kind of, that's a touchy subject.
It's a difficult situation for all of the government.
Yeah.
Because now because of their actions, there's going to be mass famine. There's a Tyson Meat just wrote an article, and they took out a huge thing that it was 2 million chickens or 2 million pounds, or it was 2 million something. And all subsequent areas, Trump had to use a wartime.
That's right. To make them go into production.
Because they had stopped production. Not only that, okay, that's just the meat supply. What about the fruits and the vegetables? We've missed a lot of the picking season. We were impacted during picking season. The planting season is ongoing now. Migrant workers, that's a whole nother debate we're going to have about immigration, migrant workers, because I disagree with illegal immigration. However, I also disagree with our current immigration package as it is. But we need migrant workers to come in and help us during the planting season. That's a big problem right now. The smaller farmers aren't receiving the support they need to plant. All of this is going to cause a reduction in the food supply worldwide. There's already this year, there's already going to be the largest number of people facing hunger than ever before.
Yes.
Now we're looking at, I don't know about the supermarkets in Taiwan, but the supermarkets here, there's certain things they just can't get back in. Bread, as soon as it appears, it's gone.
It's gone.
People stop buying toilet paper.
Okay.
I never understood that. Christian and I did not do the huge toilet paper run. We bought regular. I still don't understand the toilet paper thing. But other foods like eggs. I'm so glad I have chickens. And we had initially 6 chickens and a rooster. A fox ate them all. So we got 3 more chickens. They're not producing eggs yet, but they will be in probably another month or so.
Okay.
But there's going to be food shortages. So now the governments are looking at the fact we're too deep into it. There's going to be food shortages.
Okay. Yeah.
What is it? The job numbers. I've seen a chart recently. I'll try to share it with you. That the jobless reports have gone beyond anything we've ever seen in history. The number of people going without a job right now, companies are just releasing them. And some companies are never going to rehire those employees. Something someone in my family said was very, very, very silly. About 2 weeks into this, I was having a debate with them. They said, oh, well, when this is over, everyone will go back to work. Okay. Let's suppose you're a small business. You and I both know small businesses have a very high chance of failure in the first 3 years.
Yeah.
In Montana, for example, 90% of Montana's business is made up of small businesses. So 90% of Montana is made up of businesses with 20 employees or less. That entire state is hurting right now. And people are not going to go back to their job because the job no longer exists.
Exactly.
What about the companies? How do they continue paying their bills? They have a light bill. They have an electricity bill. They have a rent or a mortgage for their place or a lease. They have bills to pay, and the money the government is providing is not sufficient to pay these debts. The Small Business Association is working to secure paychecks, but not at the rate and at the level small businesses need. So they're going out of business left and right. Here in Belgium, for example, I have pictures. I've started going through just taking pictures of all these small businesses. They have a for rent sign or a closed sign out front. They're done. Those are jobs that are not returning. So how would the government, if the Democrats at this point give any ground, they're done. If the Republicans at this point give any ground, they're done, because the people are going to immediately blame that party for what they're about to endure. They're going to endure. That party, whoever gives ground first, is going to be blamed. So how do you then admit to what's happened, and how do you come out of this situation in a manner that saves as much face as possible? I think is what every world government's considering right now.
Right.
Because I think they've all realized this is a big mistake. They've messed up.
How do they recover? Now, I heard mention of another Marshall Plan or something similar to another Marshall Plan, which possibly may help. I think no, we know just boom off the top of our head where we say common sense, which I always had an issue with the word common sense. Where's all this sense in common? I may have grown up this way and it's not so common to me, but nevertheless, common sense would say we're going to have to work together, both sides. Set aside, but they're not going to do that because all on both sides, it seems to only be about power.
Yeah.
And I'll be the first to admit, I was looking at an old high school yearbook of mine when I was first elected VP of student council. I helped the girl become president of student council by me giving a speech on her behalf. And there's this quote, which I'm going to say it now, so if I ever run, it was a stupid thing. They said, it had a picture of me and the advisor. They said, why, Walter, why do you like the position? And I said, because I like power. I'm like, this is the worst thing I've ever said in my life at 16 years old. I just destroyed my career. I'm like, well, there it is. It's power. And I'm like, but you know what? Coming from a 16-year-old, off the top of his head, no, I didn't want to.
That's the most truthful sentence ever spoken.
It is the truth. I don't want to solve world hunger or make the senior class better or make the student council. I said I wanted the power. Now, here's the thing. Now that we're in the position of power, Spider-Man, which with great power comes great responsibility, and even John Maxwell said, leaders aren't born, well, they can be, but really leaders are made. You can be mentored, you can be taught. And so, I mean, a legacy that these politicians can leave is a working together to say, first of all, they're coming together that we've messed up. That's not going to happen. Coming together across the aisles to fix this, that will never happen. So the thing is, how do you go from reversing that? Studies have shown that, because I was studying something in politics, that was my major for a while. Studies have shown that people are much more forgiving of a candidate if he just fesses up to it and says, guys, I messed up. And that kind of, but it's pride. You're right. It's a push. It's a pride thing that has gone through all these countries. No one is willing to say, hey, this doesn't look good. We're just going to dig in and stick to our talking points and our bullets and keep going back and forth. I remember seeing the study. I think what the WHO did, and I could be wrong, but I was reading something where the final thing I read about masks and stuff was that the primary reason is it's psychological.
Yeah.
and the other part is the cloth mask. Yeah. Is more to stop you from getting the droplets out. It won't. Yeah. And the 95 mask will be more for you getting it. But, so I think, and I don't know, I think the WHO kept going back and forth because it's like they were getting it in real time. Oh, no, this is the latest thing. It's like, wait, no. Cloth mask so people can't get it out. Oh, 95 mask so people can't get it in. And then the rest of it is psychological. But everyone wants to come off as if I know what I'm saying. I'm Mussolini. Yeah, this is right. New order, like Animal Farm. New thing, 2 legs bad, 4 legs good. Next thing, all animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others. So they just kept putting out these things, but no one wants to say, after careful consideration, let's backtrack. This bullet point here, studies have, you just give people some hardcore information and say, this is what we've discovered now. Yes, people are going to be upset. They're going to say, we don't trust you. But if anything, you'll have some type of track record showing it. But people won't do that. There's a website I follow sometimes called theelders.org. It was started by Nelson Mandela. And it's elder statesmen, and I like to go in there and see what they say sometimes. Sometimes they can have sort of when I say a liberal bent, as I am 50 now, as I begin to understand, people have thrown that term liberal and conservative around where it's just a bad name on either side. Mm-hmm. And so when I say people have a liberal bent,
name calling rather than defining.
Yeah, I think some people that are more liberal, true quote unquote, not the angry. When they're liberal, I think sometimes they just mean I'm trying to give everyone just a chance. I'm trying to a little open. When I see people conservative, I think of people more. I want safety. I want fairness and good. I get something, you get something. So I kind of see but I can see how it's become a monster on both sides. Just case in point, I was looking at someone's response back and forth on Facebook. It's amazing. I almost said, and I put it in my notes, I said, I should just do a podcast on discussing the back and forths of this and with commentary, because it gets so amazingly intense, and it denigrates the name calling in the end. One person has 1,000 facts, the other person's like sending memes up, whatever. But I think
that's the thing. That's why I enjoyed debating with you, and I enjoyed debating with Achilles. And I'd like to bring one of the more liberal people I know in life, but intelligent, and he supports things with facts. Is another gentleman named Christopher.
Okay.
I don't mind you're leaning left or leaning right. What I've always enjoyed discussing with you and the other people I mentioned is you support your opinion with some sort of evidence.
Yeah.
You don't just say something wild and off the cuff.
No.
You support it with valid evidence. I can look up and say, okay, I understand where he got that idea from. I don't necessarily agree with it, but I understand where he came from. Versus some other people, what you just said, they just start responding with memes and such.
Yeah.
That doesn't support your point. You're trying to make an argument. Let's make the argument. Where did you come up with this idea? Where did it originate? Because I might think it's a good idea and change my opinion.
Exactly. That's all. And maybe it came through age. I took that little test online one time about where I am politically. So if this wasn't, I can't. So I'm conservative. But I'm conservative with just the spot over into the lower level to liberalism, meaning that. And when I took it, I said, okay, I'm not liberal, but I listen. I will consider your point.
I don't want to discuss my test then, because I didn't score as well as you did on the Republican side. I was quite surprised with my test. I was like, oh.
Yeah. I was kind of libertarian Republican.
I call myself libertarian to be safe.
Yeah. I was in the middle, but with one tick mark to the upper right. I'm like, what am I?
Yes.
So, and like I said, I like to say, well, I agree. I heard Colin Powell mention something like, that's it. He said he was on something. He said, I believe that he said he became a Republican later on. He wasn't a lifelong Republican, because he said when he was in the military, he didn't. He said whoever was the commander in chief, that was it. Then when he became national security advisor, he said he believed in, which was what I believe, especially as an ex-soldier or as a contractor. I believe in strong defense. We have to. I believe in good foreign policy, and I believe take care of our own, but also believe in let's work together so all of our own can have a little bit. Yeah, I saw that. All of our own could have a little bit. And I hate the name calling where people say, "Oh, you're just a rhino, Republican in name only, or lid hard." I'm like, oh my God, you can't even have a position now.
Well, it's actually quite amusing if you look at the base principles of both sides, both parties. In the United States, actually, they're fairly similar. It's just how they show that publicly. And this thing's driving me absolutely crazy. It's the first one of the season.
Well, he wants his point too.
Yeah, he wants his point. He wants to be considered. So they, both sides are very similar. They just have a couple basic things that they disagree upon. But when you see them actually in Congress and in the Senate and as president, you would think that these are vastly different parties.
Yep.
When in actuality, they have very similar views. I think it's just that the representatives they're behaving in the manner you said. They're locked in battle with one another, with both parties, rather than saying, look, we're both Americans. We're elected to represent our district, our state, and we need to look at what's best for our state. And I think that's one of the other issues that we've seen in the response to this pandemic is that people are being criticized for their handling of their state. Governor Greg Abbott, he was elected to represent Texas, and he's representing Texas to the best of his abilities. And so is the governor of California. And you know what? The people elected him, although the majority of people probably didn't vote, except for during the presidential election, as we discussed earlier.
Yeah.
But the fact is, you have the news media widely criticizing decisions based upon a political agenda rather than this state is in this situation, it's applicable to this state, and the governor made the decision based upon these factors. Like, let's take, for example, and I won't go back to a psychological factor you mentioned earlier from the World Health Organization. Now, recently, the president was criticized for telling people to inject disinfectant into themselves and use a UV light to cure themselves. That is not what he said. I listened to the remarks, and a UV light is a treatment. They use that in various treatments, and also if you look at the general makeup of the vaccines, they have a lot of detergents in them. They have a lot of poisons in them. I actually posted on my Facebook, and I can post it on the comments of this, the makeup of a general vaccine. And you would be alarmed to find out what actually is in a vaccine. So when people say, haha, he was talking about injecting Lysol in him, which I heard a couple of doctors joking about that listen to the speech, and they know what a vaccine is made up of. I was appalled to hear them. And you knew they weren't laughing because they had actually looked into his remarks with any sort of intelligence. They looked at his remarks from a political stance. Exactly. I think that's the whole world is in this terrible situation, this perilous situation, because of the pride of those we have elected. It makes me question whether we need to reelect these people or not.
I don't think we should. You know what? I
question it. They're going to have to really argue their case come election time, because I'm going to be looking for a new candidate based upon what they did during this crisis.
Yeah, no, I saw that. I saw what the president said, and I saw how he was saying it, and then I see how people told. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh. So anyway, yeah, I saw.
Officer just came in.
Oh, well, you should stand at attention. That's how we do it. No, I saw how the president. I saw that bit when the president responded and stuff. And I saw, you could see him. To me, it looks like he was
the charger for that, Christina. Oh, never mind. She'll find out. Go ahead. Sorry.
He was. I could tell. You could tell that he was really just kind of working. I would say off the cuff. It looked like he was appearing to be an open
briefing, and he was brainstorming with the doctors just prior to the press conference. And he had the doctor in there. And the doctor even did her face down because she knew the remarks were going to be misinterpreted immediately from the brainstorming. So, and everybody's like, oh, the doctor was laughing at him. No, the doctor was saying, oh, my God, people are going to be thinking he said it just to do something silly. And that's precisely what the press reported. You can't even – they have such an agenda. So let's say their president comes out right now and he says, you know what, hey, we overreacted. And now we're in a really terrible situation. We're in quite a predicament now with the food supply and unemployment and such. The press isn't going to give that man an ounce of movement to present a resolution. They're just going to immediately attack him and do everything to ensure that someone who is clearly suffering from dementia, Joe Biden, gets elected. And
it seems that way to me too. Even the look on his face looks like he's.
So I don't know. Compose a sentence almost as bad as I. Yeah. Perhaps he has the same problem. He can't complete a sentence. But the issue is, I think perhaps the media is another element to the response of the governments. The governments know that if they give any ground, the media is going to eat them alive. So that's perhaps another element we're not taking into account with the government's response.
Right.
I don't know.
You're right. It's hard to say because there's going to be an agenda just on both sides. And this looks like a person would almost have to resort to citizen journalism, but as a citizen, you'll never get access to the White House. Of course. I was brainstorming with someone. I said, I could do citizen journalism. Okay, I'm not going to get access to any briefings, but I can position myself somewhere wherever the press comes out. And I say, Walter Brooks, Freedom News or Independent News. What did you learn? I'm just going to interview the reporters. So it's the only way you're going to get your information.
That would be amazing.
You know,
the reporters.
Yeah,
the interview.
I don't have press credentials. I can't even get within 1,600 feet or meters to the White House. But you may get one and say, well, this is what I got. I'm like, is this straight facts? Yeah, okay. But we're not, because there's an agenda always going. And like you said, even if the president said, okay, we're doing this, they would say, president admits that he doesn't know what he's doing. That's how they would fabricate that. If he said we were wrong in this, to say president admits that he doesn't know what he's talking about. Yeah, it'll be something
exactly.
Like
that. And it would be the fact that the government in whole got it wrong, but that's not how it'd be reported.
No.
Another thing to consider, something else is, and I'll let you go. It's approaching an hour. I want to keep it around an hour.
Okay.
The psychological factors that's going on. Now, I remember years ago, one of the primary reasons I pulled my children out of public school and began homeschooling is because I didn't like the psychological attacks that our children were enduring from the staff and from the teaching agencies, not let alone from the other children. Some of the policies being put in place, such as no PDA, no public displays of affection.
Right.
Now, that's an issue because, for example, teenage girls, when they're feeling down, when they're feeling sad, the human person thrives on touch, caring touch. They've actually done numerous studies that show a hug for 20 seconds can have some of the same or better effects than going out into the wilderness for 20 minutes. Just hug somebody that's sad and hold them for 20 seconds.
Right.
And it releases a bunch of endorphins.
Yeah.
It changes the person's attitude, makes them feel better. When they implement these policies, these girls who are sad and crying, who would normally depend upon their friends for a hug, these girls were getting in trouble for hugging one another when they were sad in the hallways. And my wife and I were gravely concerned about what else was going on. What other factors were in play that we didn't even know about as far as policies were concerned? So we began digging into it. And that's one of many factors that led to us pulling our children out of public school.
Okay. I can see that.
Now, you take the mass population. The mass population, right now, they're already prior to this, they were doing studies where they were bringing infants who had been abandoned, infants that were destined for foster care, into elderly homes. And the infants and the elderly people were benefiting from this interaction. They were having the elderly who had no visitors hold these infants. The infants were benefiting. The nursing home patients were benefiting, and the psychological benefits of this were just building up. It was a wonderful study that showed how humans thrive off of touch and contact with one another. Now we take the entire world and we isolate them.
Yes.
Take the entire world and we do the exact opposite of what this study says.
Right.
6 feet away from each other. Stay inside. Already, we're seeing an increase in the divorce rate, people filing for divorce. We're seeing an increase in the spousal abuse cases. We're seeing an increase in molestation cases. We're seeing an increase in children getting hurt by their loved ones. We're seeing all these psychological factors come into play by separating people and telling them not to touch one another. Not only that, we're making them afraid of one another. So the World Health Organization might be trying to protect us from this 0.3% chance of death, according to that University of Southern California study. Well, what are they doing? They're practically guaranteeing the number of suicides will rise. They already have risen. What will they rise to when they release this and people by the millions are without jobs and without the ability to support their family, and they're losing their houses and they can't feed their kids? What are they going to do then? And that's my main issue with how the government are mishandling this situation.
Yeah. Now, that's a lot. I've got a question for you with that being said. 2 things. What is your opinion? Now, first of all, with what you said, I think that is good. And do you think that with that happening, is that triggering? Because I've seen reports of people in the States losing their minds over people wearing masks and trying to social distance. So you see a whole other group of people climb out of the woodwork, so to speak, yelling at people for having their mask on,
and
keeping social distance. And I don't know if that's highlighted, but and the other part is,
I think it's frustration coming.
Frustration.
I think it's frustration.
Right.
Because here's an example. And I used this example with a family member, and they got really upset, and then they doubled down. Okay. People are being told to call special hotlines, anonymous hotlines, and in California, they're actually getting paid to tell on their neighbors for not social distancing.
Okay.
So my argument is that if you would tell on your neighbor for having their friends over, you would also tell on Anne Frank. You would also tell on Harriet Tubman.
Right.
You would. That means you would be an asset during the regime of the 1940s, because you would be willing to out somebody, no problem, because the government told you to. And so I think that general frustration is coming out when I see somebody with a mask in their own car by themselves driving. I see them as someone who is a tool to be used by the government for my control. Now, I'm not going to do anything about it because it's logical. It's not hurting me. And if they want to be so fearful that they're going to wear a mask in their own car, that's just more power to them. That's fine. And it's not my business to infringe upon their right to be afraid. Maybe they enjoy it. I don't know. But that person, now I have to keep that in mind. If I do something or if I talk to somebody and I'm within 6 feet, that person's going to call immediately. And so how do I feel about this person? Do I want them to continue living as my neighbor? So I can understand frustration coming out among people. Now, I wouldn't. Now, my neighborhood's wonderful. It's full of great people. And but for those people in that situation, I can understand their frustration, or I can't, but I can imagine their frustration when they see their neighbor wearing a mask while mowing the lawn. Dude, there's nobody around you. Why are you wearing a mask?
Right. Yeah, that's a situation. Now, me here, I mean, people wear masks. Sometimes I wear it, sometimes I don't.
I have to wear one at work. It's not my choice.
Now, and when I'm walking around and there's no one around me, sometimes I'm at work like, what am I doing? I can't breathe. There's no one around me. Then when I get into the location, I put my mask on. Now, if I saw someone with a mask and I'm in the U.S., that's fine. And I may don my mask. Now, you got two things. If someone's going to approach me in such a belligerent manner, you've got another problem that could happen. And so I'm like, let me wear my mask.
Let them wear their masks. Leave them alone. I think it's rude. It's ungentlemanly and unladylike conduct to get in somebody's face because they're wearing a mask because they're afraid, or they think for them, they think they're doing their social duty to wear a mask, and that's their right. And I support that. I think whether I was or was not wearing a mask, if somebody came up to me and started yelling at me for one or the other, there would be a greater conflict than a mask at play.
That's true. Yeah. Now, with that being said, I know we're pressed for time. My final question: the situation that's happening in like Michigan, and I understand people protesting, and I know people throw Second Amendment rights now, and I watched the back and forth on Facebook, which brought to mind. I should comment on this. Which I understand they can protest or whatever, but I always wondered what was the purpose of them bringing their weapons. I mean, I believe in guns too. My dad has a ton of guns. He said he's going to leave to me, But so, what was the purpose of the weapons? And I don't know. I wondered. I said to myself. I wondered: are people trying to trigger something? Are people trying to start another David Koresh Waco thing? Or they're just bringing in, like I think sometimes they just bring their guns, trying to be the alpha. Regardless, I'm like, okay, they can bring their guns. I mean, if it's legal, if you want to bring your guns, I don't know why you bring your guns to a protest, but you think maybe they think that they're going to be assaulted, and then we're just going to free for all.
Here's a couple of theories I have, and I think I'm giving them more credit than they're due with one of these theories. Okay. My first theory is that they're just being dumb.
Okay.
They brought them to the protest to make a point that there is a standing Second Amendment. That we're if the government doesn't stop their nonsense, that we'll use the Second Amendment. And honestly, I think most people in the United States are too fearful to actually engage the Second Amendment. I think it's all show. If I see anyone actually engage, I'd be surprised. I think it's just all banter. The second thing I've considered about that is by showing up with their weapons, they prevented the police from breaking up the protest. Now, if you're a police officer and you see a bunch of people who are standing within 6 feet of each other or touching each other or hugging each other, and they don't have a mask on, and there's a order from your state governor and your city mayor to arrest or to ticket anyone who's doing that, you would be prone to go ticket them unless they have a M4 strapped to their chest. Now you're going to be less likely to approach them and ticket them. So that might have been their thing. They might have said, okay, well, we're going to go and we're going to protest this lockdown, this nonsense. And at the time, there were sections of stores that had taped off the areas of seeds. So a lot of them were saying, okay, we weren't able to purchase seeds, which actually it turned out they didn't cite seeds specifically for stores to take off. But even here, for example, I was trying to buy garden hoses and I was trying to buy a gardening equipment and I couldn't. And I was like, why is the government preventing me from purchasing seeds and gardening equipment when they know there's going to be a food shortage? It's almost intentional that they're trying to cause a food shortage. And that might have been what they felt was happening. But I think it was unintentional. I think just a dumb choice from the stores or from the city mayors. I don't know. So I think when they went to go and do the protest, and this is giving them a lot of credit, they said, hey, if we go there and we protest and we're just a bunch of people standing around, the police are going to come break us up and give us all tickets, like what happened to that church down in Mississippi when they all went to a drive-in. They went into a drive-in congregation. Everyone was in their cars and they were each issued $500 citations. That's crazy. They were in their car. They weren't in contact with each other. But because they had said you're not allowed to do that, and that's another agenda. Why are you going to prevent churches from having congregation if they're all in their cars? There's just so many questions about what's going on. It just doesn't add up. And you know what? One of the talking points the media likes to say is correlation does not mean causation, right? But when there are so many correlations, you can't point out those series of correlations. You can't say it's not the cause. And the fact that the media says correlation is not causation means there is something going on and there is a correlation and they're trying to cover. Whenever the media says something is not the cause, that's typically the cause. So I think that the protesters showing up with their weapons like that was honestly, they probably were just going overboard with their protest. But if I were to give them credit, say they were thinking things through, then they might have done it to prevent their arrest or being ticketed, because the cops would not want to approach several hundred heavily armed people protesting.
That might be. And you know, and I would probably say that recently, when people protest anything that has to do with our constitutional rights, they come strapped with all their constitutional rights, freedom of speech, freedom. I think that it's kind of symbolic, but it could, but sprinkled in that symbolism are some wild hairs, possibly. But I think just from what we were discussing, when I think about it, it's always a constitutional rights, and I think they come with everything that's constitutional but the kitchen sink. My freedom to protest, freedom to speak what I want to speak, and freedom and my right to bear arms. So I think it could be a combination of that. I think they're just a walking protest sign, but there's a possibility of it going horribly wrong.
It could, and I think that them having the weapons on them increases the chance of something going horribly wrong, because honestly, I think that it's a tinderbox. That's a tinderbox. And their decision to do that was highly questionable. I don't know if I agree or disagree. I agree with the right to bear arms and You know, I think you should use it, and as the Second Amendment intended, to overthrow a tyrannical government. But a tyrannical government is not what we have now. We have a out of control government who doesn't use their thinking facilities the way they should, perhaps.
Right.
But they're far from tyrannical.
Oh yeah. They just
I don't know if I
react.
necessarily, I don't necessarily agree with their behaviors there, but again, it's their choice, and that was their right. So who am I?
I agree. I couldn't say. I mean, you know.
But all right, I think it's wonderful chat.
Well, yeah, I did too.
I think we're gonna have to do more of these. Perhaps we'll do it on your channel next time. Flip flop between channels. Set up a StreamYard account. It's a really easy platform to use.
I'm going to do. I like it. I will do that.
We can do it on yours. Maybe next time we'll do it on Keely's if he's available during that time. And
okay. That sounds good. I'm going to have to brainstorm and see. Well, just seeing what's out there right now in the world.
That's a good point from Christina. She has put a comment on there, especially since there's so much filtering on social media already. It feels like masks are a way to symbolize that they want us to be quiet and do what they say. That's a valid point.
You know, that is.
It's almost symbolic of telling us to shut up and sit down. We control you. So the people wearing a mask, you see those people are the ones who are okay. Yes, mom. Yes, dad.
Right.
Although they are the ones who elected the officials in office. It's almost a symbol of. It's become a symbol of control. So that might be another.
That's a good point too. Yeah, that's actually a really good point. I could see that. I could see that as well. Over here, of course, in Asia, because people are always wearing masks. They've been wearing masks
in Asia since
for pollution. Yeah, pollution problems. And as my teacher said, in Taiwan, they're so afraid of illnesses that this is so. It was easy. Like people already wear masks all the time. Yeah, I bought masks when I first got here. I'm like, yeah, pollution probably is bad. You could see a haze over the city. I'm like, oh, well, that might. So, and good thing I had them because they came in handy now. Yeah. So it was easier for people here to do it. I think, you know what? I think sometimes you have to respond, maybe, I could be wrong, based on the culture of the population.
I think
what is the American culture? Yeah. We can't respond that way. So you can see why people are like, hey, they'll do it for a while, but after, now like, hey, we're tired of being here and we're starving. We're bills are due. So, something has to come in. We do need a real, where's Jimmy Carter? Well, he's ill. We need a real elder statesman who can kind of think through these things. But I think Jimmy Carter, since he fell, his age is really catching up with him. He had 2 falls. We haven't heard from him since. So he's in his 90s. So, but I don't know if we have those voices around or who's advising whom. But eventually I think all things do work out. I don't throw in the towel yet on the U.S. Hopefully we will bounce back and we'll be resilient as ever. And but we'll see. Maybe Kenneth Copeland was right. No. I'm sorry. That's Spanish. I'm sorry.
That's fine. But I think you're right. I think we'll see where this leads us to. But I think that's a wonderful point to end on. Well spoken and very articulate, Walter.
Oh, well, thank you. I try.
All right.
Well, hopefully I'll see you.
Thank you for having me on. I'll see you next Saturday then.
All right. I'm looking forward to it.